Critical Role announces the release date for Daggerheart, D&D is finally looking to create some new campaign settings, and Brandon Sanderson has a problem with Magic the Gathering.
Something about it is not clicking with me.
Welcome to Tabletop News Tuesday, your first look at the week's biggest fantasy and TTRPG news. Today we're talking Daggerheart, D&D, and Magic the Gathering. But first, please take a second to hit those like and subscribe buttons to help us keep this channel growing. And then, let's dive into the news.
Check this out!
Critical Role has finally announced a release date for the highly anticipated Daggerheart TTRPG. The new RPG, created by Critical Role's Darrington Press publishers, will hit local game stores first on May 20th, before getting a wide release at bookstores and other retailers on June 3rd. This move follows D&D's new policy of giving local game stores a similar 2-week or so window of early releases on their new books before they hit other stores, which is great for encouraging those stores to stock the new Daggerheart system. The other bit of info we got was a look at the 6 campaign frames that will launch with the new rulebook. Campaign frames being Daggerheart's version of a campaign setting, basically. The one that's getting a lot of attention and has the biggest appeal for us is the Beast Feast campaign frame, which is described as a cozy cooking and dungeoneering setting that seems very heavily inspired by the very popular Delicious in Dungeon anime that took Netflix by storm over the last year, and features friend of the channel, Damian Haas. So if you're looking forward to checking out the final version of Daggerheart and its 2d12 based system of Fear and Hope dice, just head to your local game store on May 20th, and you can grab yourself a copy.
You've come to the right place.
Wizards of the Coast is looking to create new worlds and campaign settings for Dungeons & Dragons for the first time since 3rd edition, according to a new D&D job posting. Dungeons & Dragons hasn't created a new, fully fledged campaign setting since Eberron debuted way back in 3rd edition, but according to a new job posting from D&D looking for a, quote, senior narrative world-building designer for Dungeons & Dragons, that's all about to change. The job is tasked with creating, quote, exciting and inspirational new settings, and to further develop existing settings, and even extends beyond just the TTRPG to video games and entertainment projects also involving D&D. Some duties of the job include designing and fleshing out new worlds, locations, and settings within the D&D multiverse, building and developing franchise-level characters, factions, and storylines, and leading development on D&D's world bibles and style guides. D&D's latest campaign setting releases have been largely criticized as shallow and incomplete compared to past releases, with Dragonlance and Spelljammer in particular getting very harsh complaints about being half-baked and very surface-level returns to classic settings. So not only are we getting potentially deeper releases of beloved settings like Planescape, Spelljammer, and Dragonlance, but we may finally be getting some new worlds for our D&D characters to explore for the first time in close to 2 decades, which is a huge deal. And we hope whoever gets this job can finally bring some much-needed variety to the official campaign setting of Dungeons & Dragons that hasn't seen a new world since those Eberron days nearly 20 years ago.
Hot damn!
Speaking of D&D, their new monster manual already has some day 1 errata to deal with. While some errata is always expected for new releases, the new monster manual appears to have 20 entries that need some fixing, ranging from major typos to full-on changes to stats. For example, the Baylor got a hit point adjustment, Arcanoloss got an armor class increase, and Ice Devils got a major buff going from 60 to 120 feet of blind sight. While this may appear to be an alarming amount of fairly significant changes and typos for a core rulebook that's been so long in development, it's also only fair to point out that with over 450 monsters included, it's also the biggest monster manual D&D has released, so a higher number of typos and issues could also be expected. Still, a lot of the changes are pretty major, like giving the Ancient Red Dragons access to even more powerful spells, or reducing the amount of spells a Githyanki warrior can cast. So if you've started putting these new monsters into your home campaign, make sure you take a second to look at this full list of changes, as some of them could have a serious impact on the threat level of the monsters your party is heading into battle with this weekend.
Son of a bitch!
And finally, the man behind the Mistborn and Stormlight Archive series and the king of Kickstarter himself, Brandon Sanderson, has some harsh words about the new Magic the Gathering Aetherdrift set and the state of Magic the Gathering lore in general. The record-breaking fantasy author revealed his complaints in the latest edition of his Intentionally Blank YouTube video series. Sanderson, who's a huge fan of Magic the Gathering and claims to have built a nearly perfect draftable commander cube, has some major issues with the way Wizards of the Coast and Magic are handling the new Aetherdrift release.
And now Death Race, they're all just getting on motorcycles and cars and joining in a giant race. It feels like wacky races where it feels like instead of going to a cool place and experiencing that world, they're play acting with their characters, and they all dress like
biker gangs.
Biker gang, and something about it is not clicking with me.
Basically, Sanderson is not a fan of how a lot of these new releases are just using the planes. They're set in as a sort of stage-like backdrop you can just plop existing characters into and throw funny costumes on them and try and milk value out of their pre-existing popularity by having them do outlandish, out-of-character things like engage in giant vehicle races or having Rakdos go on a wacky heist mission. Sanderson feels like Magic needs to go back to creating distinct, separate planes that have their own characters and their own distinct lore, instead of relying on dropping in these established characters into shallow new planes like they've done with Aetherdrift. He's looking for Magic to focus on making new characters that fit the new and unique planes that they will be creating, which would take more time and more effort, but ultimately would create a much better lore and more distinct and interesting plane for Magic the Gathering to utilize and explore in their expansions. And we have to say, the way he explains it makes a lot of sense. And when the man behind two of the most popular fantasy settings of all time, and who holds every major Kickstarter record for his fantasy novels and fantasy TTRPG, tells you that you are screwing up your lore, Wizards of the Coast and Magic would be wise to listen and start getting their act together. That's all we have time for this week, so let us know which story was your favorite down in the comments, and please don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons.